Good.
Crusader 32, welcome to the Kriegsspiel Umpiring Chat Show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
It's great to. We actually brainstormed a little bit on your game when you were talking about doing some video back in the day on your fantastic Transylvania game,
Uh,
if you recall.
which oh the old one, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
We put together that tremendous after action review. So talk about. So, which part of the world are you in? Don't tell anything personal. Which part of the world do you live in?
Well, I currently live in Hungary, although
Okay.
I'm originally from Romania and more specifically Transylvania.
Yep.
So I am naturally inclined towards that geographical area historically.
It makes sense. I've actually been to Cluj.
Oh, no, it's a pretty nice place. It's
Yeah.
one of the fastest growing cities in the EU.
A lot of great programmers there, so that's what took me there. So there's like four universities in Cluj and a lot of very smart people.
Yeah, it's
So
a large university town.
absolutely, terrific. And so you're in Hungary now. So how did you find the IKS? Just talk about how you found us.
If I recall correctly, it was YouTube video. I don't exactly remember which one, but if I
Okay.
had to guess, it was probably the Grand Gettysburg.
Right. That certainly is one that a lot of folks had a chance to see. So early on, so we fought Gettysburg on a grand scale a couple times. So that's great. I also saw that video early in my days. So. And what kind of gaming were you doing prior to the IKS? Were you a board gamer? Did you do role playing? What was interesting to you?
Prior, I was interested in getting into like miniature wargaming, but the oh my god, my English can't English right now. Like the initial like hardship of getting into it
Sure.
was just too high. Like you need to, especially because I'm interested mostly in like black powder stuff. So like for a Napoleonic game, you would need to put out a lot of miniatures, which is both expensive and extremely time consuming. So that's what I'm thinking. A high barrier of entry. That's the thing.
That's a good way to think about it. I think you're right. And imagine if you tried to get miniatures for the Romania, the Transylvanian um, Wars of Independence. So yeah,
I mean,
you'd have to search far and wide to find the right miniatures for that. So I think
yeah,
you made a wise move. Yeah.
there's some 50
I hear
millimeter stuff that is basically like 1848 stuff by a Hungarian company, but they don't really make too much stuff. So
you. Right. Makes sense. And did you do any board gaming in terms of hex encounter, any of that before that?
well, I mean, the closest thing I ever got to like a hex encounter was having Memoir 44. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it.
Yeah, I know that game. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
But so like after that and after I basically realized that I probably wouldn't be able to play like tabletop war games of that sort. I got Tabletop Simulator and basically started to make like my own homebrew systems
Yeah.
for like miniatures on TTS.
Yeah. That's a very reasonable and smart thing to do
Yeah.
because you cut and paste. You
Yeah.
know?
Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find any partners to play out my systems with, but
Right. Well, that's okay because it manifested in other ways. Certainly,
indeed.
as you carried it forward. Now, your interest in the history of Transylvania and certainly in military history, because you had an astonishing amount of detail in the couple games you've done on that. Are you a history major? Is it, or are you a mathematician who likes history?
No, I'm not exactly familiar with like terms, like
No.
academic terms in English, but I am currently doing my bachelor's in history.
Okay, great. So you study history.
Yes, yes.
Perfect. That's great. And what is your obviously you enjoy some history of where you're from, but what period are you focusing on? I know bachelor's is a more of a general approach, but what period is interesting to you?
I personally mostly fast like I am very focused on military history because
Okay.
I guess that comes off from the sort of stuff I do. Um, and like period wise, I'm like most particularly interested in the 1848 and 49 Hungarian Revolution and then War of
Yeah.
Independence.
Yeah.
And basically, I originally started from Napoleonics, I guess, which is
Right. Right.
what I would call up my first proper historical interest. Because before that, everybody has their World War II phase if they're into history, but
Right. That's
I
right.
wouldn't really call that like proper history stuff. What I was
We
doing
all
back
have
then.
to go through it eventually.
Yeah.
I agree.
But yeah,
Okay.
I'm currently expanding so both Napoleonics and shortly before that, and I am just now in getting interested in some First World War stuff. So that's
Okay. Great. Yeah. So for those of us who don't have the benefit of having been raised in the schooling that you were raised in, is the 1840s covered very deeply in your schooling naturally? Is that like a history that's known there, or is that just something that was interesting to you?
I mean, generally, I think 1848, 49 isn't specifically touched on in very much in depth, but I think a lot more in depth than in like other countries which were affected in the period. Because,
Okay.
like, I'm not really familiar with like the French or German curriculum, but I think it's more emphasis here. And for like the 1840s and before the 1830s, it's a very heavy emphasis because a lot of large reforms happened in Hungary during that period.
Okay. Got it. Yeah. It's always interesting to see what the emphasis is or what the focus is in different curriculum.
Yes.
Certainly reflecting the values of the culture, et cetera. So that's
And the values of the current ruling uh,
exactly.
party, if I may. Because, yeah, some stuff, like some of the narratives, I was really, how should I put this? I did not really like how they were portraying it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that would suffice, I think.
Well, that's the interesting part of this hobby is when you go back as a historian, the historical part of our hobby is you go back and read sources from different periods. You can really see the different ways that it's presented. So that's part of the to me that's part of the fascinating things is how the styles change. Right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about your combat system that you tried on that TTS and how much of that carried into Kriegsspiel and how did you adapt that?
Honestly, I don't think it carried over at all
Okay.
because how I initially got into umpiring was being an assistant umpire in like two
Right.
or three games,
Yeah.
and one of them was a game ran by Justin, which I can't really remember. One of the first uh, test games he ran
Uh huh.
with a new system. I'm not really sure if it is in any way connected to anything. It was really like years ago at this point, so I have no idea. But it was still using the brigade dice, the old brigade dice from the SoCal system.
Okay. Sure. Cool. So you saw that on the table as an assistant umpire, and was that a live game or play? Yeah, it was a live game.
Live game, yep.
Okay. How was it being an assistant umpire in a live game? How did you find that?
Honestly,
How what was the experience of that?
initially, the first game I assistant umpired was I can't remember which ACW, but it was a very large ACW live game,
Right.
which I volunteered to help them with umpiring.
Right.
And then before I even got to give out my like first reports, because I got there late because they were asking for like replacements. They decided to call the game.
Okay. Well, well, here's the thing. if you volunteer for a game and they call the game, you still get credit for umpiring. That's how it works.
Yeah.
So you were a successful umpire.
Extremely successful indeed.
There you go.
Yeah,
Okay.
but like generally, I think uh, I tried to basically understand the system, even if we weren't really like supposed to,
Right.
because I was really interested in the backside of things.
And what is that? What is it that draws you to that? Do you like the entertainment side? Do you like the research side? What is it about umpiring that really gets you going that you enjoy?
I have to say, I my favorite part of the like my two favorite parts of the game is doing the research for the game, which is where the majority of my time is spent, for the actual game, and then afterwards working on the after action report and then
Yeah.
finishing that.
And you did for the Transylvania game, the after action report that you did by commander, citing historical examples of what those each of those commanders did was an amazing piece of work. So, I just think it's one of the it inspired me to increase my the level of my AARs when I looked at what you did there. It's just a terrific piece of work you did.
I tried really hard because I very rarely like read areas of games I don't play in.
Hmm.
Uh, so I wanted to create something that was both detailed for the people who are actually in the game and are interested in that detail, but also being something that without too much prior knowledge you would be able to jump into and enjoy.
Yeah, right. I thought one of the things you did was really great was you focused on personalities. And so you talked about the different corps commanders and the different things that they did as people. And so it really made for good storytelling in an area that I had zero knowledge about. So I found it very engaging reading.
Yeah, it's like I think that is one of the harder parts, and the reason why I don't do like narrative AARs during the actual game, like
Right.
written out things, because uh, I think in order for it to be like narratively cohesive,
Hmm.
I would need to like first finish it and then dwell on it a bit to like get my thoughts in order,
Yeah.
and then I could organize the narrative in a way that I think would be interesting for someone who isn't really interested in the actual topic, like the base topic that it's depicting.
That's a really good point. I hope the umpires listening hear that. So after the game is done, how do you how do you allow yourself to think it through? Do you review the materials or you just kind of leave it alone and think about it afterward?
Uh,
How do you go in that
usually,
process? Yeah.
usually how I do like my play-by-post stuff is I find like a month or two where I'll be like just completely free, which
Yeah.
is like this time that my last game was. Of course, I'm in like the uh, history is in the like arts faculty. I think would be the term.
Uh-huh.
So we have a lot of exams because we have a lot of like like courses. So the exam period is very long.
Right.
So I did all my exams during like the first half of the exam period. So I had about a month and a half uh, to run my game
Right.
completely free.
Yeah.
So then naturally from that, after I do the game, I usually have something like so. I usually get busy
Right.
right after doing the game, so I can take my mind off of things, which is often very much needed.
Sure. Sure.
So I plan to get back. Like for instance, I haven't even started properly working on the AR for my last game, which I ran like 3 months ago at this point, I think. But I plan to, as the moment I finish my exams, I plan to basically get on that.
So, what? How do you refresh your memory 3 months later about a game? Uh, do you go back and read the materials, or how do you just freshen up so you can think about it again after your exams, which are very a busy time, obviously.
Yeah. Well, I of course read all the material,
Uh huh.
like read all the stuff, all the like. I still remember like the gist of what I thought. So I tried to look back on like key moments and the events that surrounded the key moments. And what I also do is a good portion of the players were like I know a good portion of the players personally. So I like do like interviews to
Okay.
refresh my memory, and it's also a really nice way to see how the players think about it after like a few months. This time I did something I didn't do in my previous game, which is I asked the players to like right after the game to write up some like recollections of their time in character,
Right.
which will be very useful because what I'm currently planning to do is I don't know how much of a cool idea it is outside my head, because the only other person I told it to was a history major.
Right.
So I, you know, but it's basically getting all the dispatches and all the memoirs and all of these kinds of like written accounts and
Yes.
compiling them into a single document and hand that to the players so they can piece it together themselves before I put out the AI.
Right. That's interesting. I think you're really touching on something that's really important. That it's such an intense experience to play these games that allowing the players to go back and piece it back together in their own mind to tell their own story on it is a very valuable thing. We tend to jump to the next game like it's a movie or a television show, right? We just move on to the next game, but really that's a very intense experience, and allowing them to go back through it's a great idea. And how are the players open to that? Are they interested in that?
Yeah, a good portion of the players actually completed it, and I still have one person pending who is working on an absolute monstrosity of a diary.
Right.
Uh, well, yeah, it's already pretty long. Like the document, I think is above 100 pages at this point.
Yeah, that's great. And just from one player's perspective.
No. The overall, like the
Oh, the overall.
dispatches and I mean the recollection. I think the recollections together are probably like 20 to 30 pages
Yeah.
currently,
Yeah.
and it's still being expanded. I still have to do something in order to like publish it because I to this point haven't like I wanted to do or I originally wanted to do basically regimental like records
Right.
where you
Right.
would have like during the like the running of the game, I would write down each day like some very mundane information that the regimental records would contain.
Right.
But due to just the workload, I dropped that idea very quickly. So I wanted to do it because I think it would be a very like useful bit of information for the players piecing together the story. Uh, I picked out a few formations, and I'm going to finish up those, and then I can finally publish it, and maybe add some things later in.
That's great. I think I would encourage you to keep pushing on this. I myself also enjoy this kind of work, so that's really terrific. What? So you said you have players that you know. How do you recruit your players, or where do you find them? Are they IKS members, or do you have some people that just do your games?
Well, uh, generally, what I do is I really don't announce my projects in advance.
Hmm.
So generally, the only people I tell when I have like a idea for a game
Hmm.
are my friends. Because I just don't like the pressure of having an idea and then putting it on the IKS and then I don't run it.
Right.
So I usually only announce the game when I'm like it's all planned out. Like I know when I'm running the game, how I'm running the game, how it's going to go, what my
Yeah.
expectations are, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then of course the announcement is when everything is in tip top shape, ready to go.
Yeah. Right. And then, what order do you put things together in? Do you put your order of battle first? Do you make the map first, or how do you think about it, just in terms of assembling the idea from start to completion?
Well, first off, I try to just get all the like second primary and secondary sources I can collect,
Okay.
and then basically like collect all the information which I think would be valuable
Hmm.
for running the game. Then I usually modify my system to fit the data more closely.
Right.
And then I get for like the like extra game information, I usually go with map, order of battle,
Okay.
and I guess last thing is the briefings.
Right. Makes sense. And so, the how do you approach maps? Are you a I've seen the maps from your game, so I think I have a sense for it. But do you use period maps? Obviously, do you like doing a lot of modification, or you use a historical map? Just what's your philosophy of map making for your games?
Yeah, I that's quite a funny story for like how I get and got my tactical maps.
Uh huh.
Um, KB asked me recently if I had like a full map of Hungary or something,
Right.
and find it quite humorous. But I have the first and second nurture survey of Transylvania on DVD.
Holy
Uh,
cow! Okay, you have a map.
because Arcanum is a Hungarian company, and they
Right.
have some stuff that they sell exclusively.
Yeah.
Like around here, basically, you can order by mail. I'm not sure if they ship anywhere abroad,
Right.
but this specific one I got at well, actually, it wasn't specifically in Hungary, but it was at like a book fair
Oh wow.
in my hometown.
Yeah. Good for
So yeah,
you. That's yeah. So you can tell Damon, Damon, that's not a map. I've got a map. That's fair.
I once had this idea of like exporting the entire map in full detail, and it was like it was quite a large file.
I can imagine. That's terrific. And so, what kind of? I'm a map nut, so I'm going to now derail us down into maps. What kind of information was on that map that's unique? Because that's a ton of detail, I imagine.
Oh, the first and second survey.
Yeah, yeah. What was the focus of that?
Oh, it's the maps up on Arcanum, like the
Okay, okay,
so like a general like a very high detail survey.
right.
Uh, but yeah, let me. Uh,
And
I don't
then,
know. Yeah,
so it's a lot of detail, obviously, on that CD. But
yeah.
and then, how do you take that and make it usable for gameplay? Because obviously, too much detail actually overwhelms the players at times. What do you do to boil that down a little bit and make it easier?
Uh, Generally for the tactical map,
Yeah.
I just zoom in on the bit I would like to have for the game. I like to make maps like I for like in case like in during campaigns. I like to make maps which make the players doubt like it. in a way that they can't be sure that the enemy they know about is the only one that exists there. So I usually take a
Right.
very large part. Like I have some very very specific thick ticks about like fog of war basically, because I
Yep.
try in a lot of like subconscious ways to basically force the players into a more intense fog of war experience.
Right. Well, I remember your Transylvanian game. You had tremendous amount of it, basically there were routes through the hills and the mountains that really forced decisions. Like they had to send their units in one direction or the other, and it made a big difference to the outcomes based on the concentration of forces. I was just very impressed with because as I was reading your after action video, it's like, wow, there's some there's some hard decisions to make here in terms of balancing forces. Let's talk a little about the game. It was a campaign game, right? So you had campaigns
Yep.
and battles, like KB does, right?
Yep. I My first play-by-post experience was Otto's March on the Rhine.
Okay.
So that was also a mixed play-by-post live game
Right.
campaign, and I really liked that experience. It's one of my favorites to this day.
Okay.
So I basically took it because I think the like main advantage of it is that you have basically real time turns. Like in that game, I had basically real time turns in
Yeah.
a
Right.
strategic sense and
Yeah.
also in the tactical sense. Like
Right.
during the actual game, 15 minutes turns would usually be around 15 minutes,
Right.
and then the large campaign turns, which were one in-game day, I would usually put out in one real life day. So
That's a
it's
really that's very cool because if you think about dispatches as an example, that means that dispatches would be written with the exact same amount of time an actual person would have. So you're not going to have time in a live game to write a 5-page dispatch, for example,
yeah.
which tends to happen on play-by-post tactical games.
Yeah, I really like how it influences, like the urgency of the situation
Right.
influences decision making a lot. Like, uh, if you just look at like live game versus play by post games on a tactical level, live games just have a lot more mistakes
Right.
generally
Right.
because people don't have 3 days to think about what they're going to do in the next 15 minutes.
Right. That's such a great point. So turns and decision making mirroring real life situations. So a live game, tactical, your play by post tends to be more of your campaign game. That's a terrific point. Good stuff. And then, which in terms of play by post, which is has more detail or live game, which is your preference in terms of umpiring? Which one do you enjoy more?
Well, by number, I probably ran like 30 or 40 live games up to this point,
You have,
but a huge majority of those were not on the IKS, and
yeah,
so like I ran, I think, on the IKS a total of like 4 live games maybe,
right.
and then 2 play-by-post games, which the most recent was
So, how do you
a
organize
few
your
months ago.
non-IKS games? These are your friends and people that are history enthusiasts or history majors that you know, and how does that work?
Yeah, generally, how I started is I made a small server with 2 friends of mine, and I ran like mostly Napoleonic, uh, like small Napoleonic scenarios,
Yep.
1v1, and I would like experiment with different systems. I got to try as like an assistant umpire for games.
I love that idea. I mean, we get so worked up and wanting to make big games with lots of spectacular events in them. Just a 1v1, you're running a game and trying things. That's terrific. I think that's really cool. And then so how did your thought about systems evolve as you did that? Where did you end up? Did you create your own system?
Yeah, basically, I was just looking at how to incentivize the players into uh, commanding their troops in a way that would make sense for
Hmm.
the 1848 and the 49 campaign. And what I settled on was a system that used concepts from a book I very like fresh on my mind, freshly read at that time, which is Clausewitz's On War.
Yeah.
Uh, one of the like the big concepts is like I read it in Hungarian, so I'm not sure what the official translation is, but basically like fire effect
Hmm.
is one of the big forces in my game, and the other is momentum.
Yes. Got it. Love it.
Uh, so these two basically like when a charge occurs, these two like go up against each other. And
Mm.
it this also means that like it's just straight numbers. Like it is I am rolling dice to determine the exact numbers, but it is just straight numbers. And these straight numbers can also get me very clear ammunition usage, which is
Yep.
incredibly important. And a lot of systems don't go into detail because they don't really need to. Because I must might be because I'm not like specifically knowledgeable about the Napoleonic period. But most of the larger armies didn't suffer from like major ammunition shortages.
Hmm.
While during like the 1848-49 conflict, it was very frequent for both sides to have severe ammunition problems.
Right. Particularly the distances and the types of terrain that you were modeling. You've got uh, transport's a problem, right?
Yeah, and also production because
Yeah, sure.
all the military production is in the western part of the empire,
Right.
like in the industrial, because uh, Hungary and by extension Transylvania, which at this point, like before 1848, it was governed separately because that's a whole different thing. But basically, these are providing the agrarian uh, side of the economy for the
Right.
empire, and the western provinces like the Czech,
Hmm.
uh, like I don't know area, and Austria is more providing the industrial base.
Right. And so you got
So
to get the industrial ammunition production, get the results of that over to the eastern side. So you got long distances and transport problems. Yeah.
yeah, and also for the Hungarians, they like originally they didn't start out with basically any uh like military material production. So they had to make like they basically had to build up their own like military industry to run the war.
Right. Right.
uh, like there wasn't a single rifle factory or
Yeah.
a major ammunition factory in the country, so they needed to like basically build those. And this is one of the reasons I was really interested in the subject of my last play by post game,
Talk about that.
uh, which was basically it's a very small area by land, an administrative like region known as a sake or seat, which is basically equivalent to a county.
Hmm.
Uh, but this specific state, uh, this specific like area, provided a very large part of the war material production in Transylvania specifically.
Hmm.
Uh, and it was due to basically the conflict I depicted, and also some very enigmatic
That's right.
I don't think that's the right word. Very emblematic. That's the thing. Yeah, very emblematic figures like Gabor Aron, who is extremely famous in Hungary,
Okay.
who basically built up cannon production
Really?
without the proper industrial basis for it.
Right. Terrific. And then talk about that play by post. So it was a campaign game. Just talk a little bit about how you organize that, number of players, things like that, because it's the amount of research you put in these is fantastic. So talk a little about the game.
Yeah, I think this last game, from memory, like if I don't just go and count it, it'd probably be around like 10 players plus the two ICs, which I permitted to detach from the superiors for this game,
Right.
which I'm not sure if that was a good idea in hindsight, but it did make for some funny events. That is for sure.
Okay.
Uh,
And what was the objectives of the two sides?
well, basically, the Austrians were starting off. So the Imperials were starting off with what they were not aware of is they were outnumbered
Okay.
because of the insane amount of the insane degree of mobilization done by the revolutionaries.
Hmm.
Basically, the entire male population between 18 and 60 was drafted, conscripted into. Calling them a military formation would be a bit of a stretch, but yeah,
Yeah.
something along those lines. Um, and they had the objective of subduing the revolutionaries as fast as possible because
How did
uh,
you how did you
yeah.
model how did you model that? Were those military victories would subdue them, or was there a kind of civilian mood or morale element to it? How did you do that?
Uh, Generally, I just went with the condition that is the most I guess simple and straightforward, and what decided it historically is the capital
Okay.
of the revolutionary seat, which was Sepsiszentgyörgy, which was about like 30 kilometers
Hmm.
from the main base of operations of the imperial basically division,
Okay.
which I think that is a very unique scenario in the sense that it is a very active, like the way a certain one of the German witness people who partook in these events
Hmm.
would name a kleiner Krieg or a small war.
Yeah.
Uh, like very active skirmishes because the the respective quote capitals of each side were within a long day's marching distance.
Right. Right. Right.
So
Right.
uh, swift and decisive maneuvering
Yeah.
on both sides is very important.
Right. Right. Oh, that's so interesting. So the capitals being so close together created a completely different command problem for both sides.
Yes,
You know.
and also the general like divisive terrain because basically a pretty decent portion and a very important portion for war material production for the revolutionaries was basically a full day's march over mountains. You know, admittedly, not the not the not quite the Alps, but mountains nonetheless.
Uh-huh.
So like that's just completely separated, and from the imperial side, it was basically 2 days march. So it is a very isolated position, which I must say I expected a lot more action to occur there, but it looks like that my players were a lot more uh, were a lot more focused on
I
the
mean,
main theater. Yeah, well,
and how
yes.
did it turn out?
Well, the game, I was very sad how the game ended, because it quite anticlimactic.
Oh, well.
Because the revolutionaries basically blundered really hard by taking the center of mass away from the main road connecting the two capitals.
Okay.
The very day that the Imperials were gathering to attack down that road.
Okay. That's a classic Kriegsspiel moment, right?
Yeah, I mean,
A very specific moment. One side attacks, the other side goes the other direction, not knowing, and there you go.
yeah. From that point on, the players wanted to fight on, but the revolution administration decided, which
That was
was basically historically what happened, that they can't they can't defend
right.
uh, the territories anymore, so they would work out a deal. Which
Right.
I will say they got a very generous deal
Okay.
from the Austrian commander, which in hindsight was probably decent for the Austrians,
Yeah.
because a lot of factors which I planned to affect the campaign didn't get to affect the campaign,
Right.
because it ended short. So basically, just to list off a few things, the revolutionaries were convinced there was going to be a Russian intervention,
Okay.
because they got news, and then some rumors and reports from spies reinforcing those rumors. And then I think the final nail in the coffin was them getting the reports that the Russian invasion is imminent within 2 weeks, and then me inviting two Russians to play Russians.
Right.
So I got two Russians to sign up as actual Russians in the game.
Right.
Uh, but yeah, and but that was never coming. They didn't know that, of course, but that was never coming.
The actual Russian says, "No, I'm not going to do it."
Yeah, I mean, it just wasn't politically feasible at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
But yeah, and from then on, as well, what the Austrians didn't know is that they were running up against time, because so basically, okay, this is I did a very roundabout way of explaining this, but uh, Jesus, okay.
all right.
So the revolutionaries thought that time was basically on the enemy's side,
Right.
and the Austrians thought that time was that also they also thought that time was on their side,
Right.
but in actuality, from information that was not available to them, it was the opposite.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, because the Russians were not coming, which was the main
Right.
time thing for the in favor of the Imperials, and also but what was in favor of the revolutionaries is the surprise offensive that would happen in northern Transylvania, very far from this place, but very much affected it historically, which was my original game. That was basically the setup for my original game. Is
Okay.
that
And
yeah,
so, what would happen? Why was time short for the Imperials? Because that northern offensive would.
generally or basically on the 20th of December, the offensive would begin, and it would just completely brush away all the Imperial forces in the north, which
Right.
means that the Imperial forces in the southern theater
Had
would
to go
need to
north.
be
Yeah.
like
Converted.
the would need to be drawn
Yep.
to oppose that, because
Sure.
the
That's
Austrians
really
needed
a
to.
great
Yep.
mechanism where you actually played with time that way. So the assumptions for both sides were off, and they
Yes.
didn't know, which is how things happen in real life. And nobody knows when they're going into a campaign what events are going to happen. So you have to be mentally flexible in real life, and then you create it in this game. That's great.
Yeah, it was also very similar historically because
Yeah.
that's what I mostly based these things on, because even after like the offensive began for like a week later, uh, basically what happened historically is that on the 24th of December, a decisive action was fought, which the revolutionaries lost,
Hmm.
and so they entered into negotiations. And then the negotiations lasted quite a while. I believe January 5th would
Uh-huh.
be the time. So it's like quite a long time. Um, but they had no information that the offensive in northern Transylvania was a thing that existed and
Right.
was incredibly successful. So they made peace without basically knowing that really large part of the situation.
Yeah,
So they got a
they didn't
really
know the leverage they had based on the northern
yes,
victory, so they made peace based on what they knew locally.
yes, which yeah, but from what they knew, it was a very generous offer from the
Right.
Imperials. The Imperials were very much like
The minute they got a
just
newspaper,
repeatedly,
they're like, "Oh, rats!"
yeah, like we need to get out of here fast. And
Terrific.
even
Yeah.
during the peace talks, they were drawing away troops in secret because they were just severely needed and like center of Transylvania.
Just absolutely imaginative and very narrative driven. You're an inspiration, I think, in a lot of ways.
Thank you.
What advice would you give to a new umpire? You have a unique path that you've taken. You do a few public games, but you do a lot with smaller games with friends. What advice would you give a new umpire that was considering doing this that would get them going?
Generally, I think just read a lot about the period or scenario you're interested in. Like kind of, I guess, piece it together. Use a system, an already existing system
Hmm.
that is tried and tested, because that's generally how your players will have like a consistent time, and you will know that it is something that works,
Right.
and also probably do be an assistant umpire for some live games.
I think that's good advice. Yeah, it really, as you did, you can see what works, get a feel for it without the stress of putting it on. Read a lot. That's come through on several of the discussions we've had here. Is the more you read, the better umpire you will be. So,
Yeah, because generally I think what I realized from like the difference between games I enjoy and don't enjoy or don't
mhm,
enjoy as much is the reports, like the narrative quality of the reports,
mhm,
which the only real way of improving it is if you read just a ton and know some like interesting things that happen that you can spice it up, or some events that you can explain like a fringe outcome with.
yeah, yeah. If your reports sound in spirit like history from that period, then you take the players to that period because they might as well be reading a book from the period. So you're able to bring that to life in very very small ways. I think that's a great point. And it's not flowery language or specific. It's just there's something about the total picture that makes players feel like they're there.
Yeah, one interesting like anecdote I did not get to use is which I read it on multiple occasions. Like a lot of these new Hussar regiments were mostly made up of like young like sons of nobles.
Uh-huh.
So just very playful chaps, and I read multiple accounts of them basically like the first encounter of battle, and they're in their position in reserve, and
Uh-huh.
then some cannonballs come rolling in, and they start looking at it and they want to pick it up.
Right.
because of course they do. And there was this one officer, like he was going up to a cannonball to like pick it up,
Yeah.
and an old veteran hussar said, "Sir, step away. That's a grenade, I think, a bomb." Like, so it was like a howitzer shell,
Yeah.
basically.
Right. Right.
So he stepped back and it exploded immediately.
Right. Right. Yeah.
That sort of thing. I really love these sort of like small things that could
It's those small
spice up.
things that bring it to life,
Yeah.
and then the more you have that, the more you can bring it to life for your own players. Crusader, thanks so much for your time. Terrific. You produce some amazing work, and I hope that you do share a little bit more with the International Kriegsspiel Society folks. Regardless of that, I would encourage you to just keep working on the great work you're doing. I know you're busy as well with the academic work, but just a credit to the community, and you do great work. And I hope we see more of it in the IKS.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll talk to you soon.